Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie, and welcome back to another DraftKings DFS Slate preview. I didn't realize how long of a gap it was going to be between this video and my last one. We had international break on top of it being an FA Cup weekend right as we got back. So yeah, it's been a while. Of course, there were still DraftKings DFS slates for soccer. In that time, there's not sites really worth having videos for. Of course, I was still doing cores and answering questions for all those slates in the FSI Discord, which can be accessed through a subscription that can be gotten through the website linked below. And besides that, let's just get right into this slate. It is Arsenal as the big favorites at minus 238, and then these Wolves, West Ham, and Forest United games, which are pretty much toss-ups. Forest are like pretty favored against Man United, which is kind of wild. You just would not be thinking that'd be like even feasible just like 3, 4 years ago. So really shows the fall off there. In terms of projected lineups and set pieces, though, for Forest, it should be an Elliot Anderson monopoly in this team, I want to say. It is really interesting that they still have no Elanga. Oh, no, Elanga's, never mind. It should be Elanga mostly with maybe some Anderson. I didn't see they had him projected as the number 9. I guess with that Chris Wood injury, they're just not sure what they'll do. It was Awaniyi in the FA Cup, but they have, yeah, Elanga playing as the striker. I'd be a little surprised if we saw that, but that's something to keep an eye on come lineups. Yeah, like I said, he'd have the most. Anderson kind of will take some one-offs as well, though. And if there is no Elanga, it should be mostly Anderson. And then for Man United, it should be a Bruno monopoly in this team. One guy to watch out for is Christian Eriksen. He's probably the only guy who, if he starts, could change sets. And I think it'd be a little bit of a toss-up whether he takes or Bruno. They kind of flip-flop both righties, so there's not like there'd be any real true split there. And the other thing is that they have Dorgu. Oh, they did have Dorgu as suspended. I'm glad they finally fixed that. And I expect him to start now that his suspension is over. Like I think we'll probably get Heaven on the bench. Mazraoui moves to center back, Dallo right back, then Dallo on the left. But once again, we'll just see how lineups shake out. Arsenal Fulham. Now, the big news here is that Saka is supposedly ready to go. I'd be a little surprised if they throw him straight into the starting lineup for a midweek game, especially. However, if he starts, like that's going to be a super interesting thing to think about. You worry about whether he'll still have his sets. You worry about how many minutes he goes. So I personally hope we just don't get him. That just seems like an unnecessary headache. But yeah, another thing is just to watch to see what they do with their starting lineup. And then for Fulham, they were really weird with sets. They got hammered by Crystal Palace in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. It was actually like pretty much a Willian monopoly. Last game before international break was like a Pereira Willian double split, which was super weird. I don't know if they'll change just because they were so poor last game, just across the board against Crystal Palace, losing 3-0. I wouldn't be surprised if they went back to Pereira Monopoly. Maybe they go back to more of a split between those two guys. Maybe they stick with Willian. I'm not really sure what they'll do, but like I said, they had so many corners against Palace, and they were just not effective with Willian taking. So it's just something to think about there. But like I said, I've got no real edge over what they do. And then Wolves v West Ham, I expect it to be an 8 Nori and Joe Gomez split. And then for West Ham in this team, it'll either be a Ward-Prowse monopoly or maybe he splits with Emerson. If we see Cresswell starting, he'd be like a split for sure. I'm not 100% sure what they do with Emerson in projected and no Cresswell, just because all of their set pieces last game were all on like a right-footed in-swinger side, which is what Ward-Prowse would take anyway. So we're just not really sure what they do with that other side in this kind of lineup. Maybe Bowen could take two, maybe Paquetá if they're feeling frisky. So who knows there? The other wrinkle in this is that we are off of a long break for a lot of these teams, and we see teams tinker quite a bit with that kind of extra time to prepare for these matches. So like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some changes just in general across the board in some capacity. Like we saw with Fulham switching to mostly Willian. We don't have that same luxury of a lot of these teams having an FA Cup game to judge off of. Pricing now. There's Saka 11,200. I wish he was cheaper just because he's been out for so long. Like usually guys who just disappear for a while just end up inevitably just getting priced down is the more time they miss. Not Saka though. This is like the most he's ever been. And it's off of an injury with a good matchup, but not that crazy. Like Fulham aren't a bad team at all. So even if he starts, like I don't think he's a lock by any means, like he would be Saka in the past, just because there's so many unknowns with him, but he's just a star. Like if he goes 90, like it's hard to see him not being in or near that optimal lineup and being just an insta lock for cash. But like I said, we just don't really know his fitness. There's just so many questions there. After him, Cunha is still out. So I guess be a great spot for him if we had him. Jared Bowen, I don't mind. 10,400 is a little bit pricey though, but as always, he's typically solid. So I don't mind that as a play. Martinelli feels kind of pricey. Elanga at 10K, I could be tempted by two. Another guy who has both upside and floor, similarly to Osaka, and he is usually safe for minutes. The worry here is that Forest did just play at Brighton not too just a couple days ago in the cup. So you worry about the minutes there for some of these guys. However, that's not an issue, I think, for Elanga, considering he didn't start that game. So like I love Elanga here. He's probably my favorite forward here in general. Other guys like Garnacho, 8,600, I don't think is crazy. Trossard, 8,200, I don't mind. Hudson-Odoi is like a little sneaky GPP play. Sure. Willian, if you want to take the plunge on whether he ends up having sets or not, I think that could be a super tempting play. It's also a revenge match too. Played for Arsenal. But also like was a big rival of them too when he was at Chelsea. So there's all kinds of storylines you can make for him in this matchup. And 5,200 is just not a bad price point at all, especially if he ends up with like a monopoly. And then the other forward I just want to quickly mention is Rasmus Højlund, because sub 4K, it looks like he's kind of put something together lately. He played well on international duty, played well last game right before everybody left. He's been pretty safe for minutes typically, just because probably they have so many injuries. Yeah, look at all those guys out. But ignoring that, like if he could, if he just gets some confidence, he could be just a super solid forward for them. Like he's super young, and I think a lot of people have kind of wrote him off too early. And at 3,900, like I think it's definitely just worth the fly. He's cheaper than he's ever been, and kind of the best form he's ever been since he's been at Man United or near that. So I could definitely see this even like as a decent cash play, just because that is just so cheap for a guy who has so much potential. There's also like Strand Larson too, who I don't mind here. He was awesome against Southampton. Of course, he had under 24 with 24 points and goals, which is what you never love to see. But you take that for his price, and it is another ceiling flyer that I could see getting to. I'd probably go Hoyland over him just because he's slightly cheaper and he's got just more talent there. But both of them are kind of just pretty intriguing GPP punts. Same with like an A1EE if he starts up top. Like there's definitely some pretty interesting forwards down here. And I could definitely see some pretty interesting like one pay up, one pay down forward builds. Midfielders. Bruno is 11K. I think he's very get toable. I don't know if that's weird, but he's get toable because of some of these cheap forwards on the slate. Like I think he's very easy to fit. He's been awesome too lately. Like people slander Bruno all the time for being petulant at times or rolling around on the ground too much, but he's just a solid player. Like, I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. Like especially for DFS, he's just a monster. So I love Bruno here. I'll be playing him almost for sure. Odegaard 9,200. I don't mind that. The scary thing is that if Saka plays, he could end up taking nothing, which would kind of make him pretty scary to play. Like if Saka plays, I'm almost certainly fading Odegaard, especially in cash. And with him in, I think he's difficult to get to, but I can make an argument for it. Pereira, I'm scared of Willian right now with him, so I don't know if I'll have a ton there. Declan Rice at 5,900 seems super tempting to me. Safe for 90, solid floor, best matchup on the slate. I like this a lot more than your Odegaard, than your Saka at price. Elliot Anderson, 5,600. If there's no Elanga, I could see that being a tempting play. Sarabi, if he starts, I don't mind. Marino is like just a GPP play. If he starts like a striker, especially, they have him projected there. 5K for a ton of upside. Got that goal against Chelsea last game. I see nothing wrong with this play as well, but probably just more of a GPP play just because he's got no floor really to him. In terms of guys cheap down here, like there's Joe Gomez, who's not bad. James Ward-Prowse, who is borderline lock probably if there's no Cresswell, just because of that potential monopoly. With not a bad matchup away at Wolves. And then like there's Smith Rowe, I mind like a GPP punt, another revenge game narrative there if you want to play that. Not in projected, interestingly enough. But if he's in 3K, that's just an upside play. Like he could drop like a 0, or you can score like a 12, which you take for sure for 3,100. Defenders. This is not a strong defender slate at all. Nico Williams is overpriced. Dorgu, I don't mind. I played him that game. He got the red card against Ipswich. He was doing super well too. He was on like 6, 7 points. Then suddenly gets a red card. He drops down to 3.9, which sucked. But saying that, he had 7 points off after 40 minutes. That's super good points per minute. Like it's good production there. 3,700 is not an awful price point, and in a pretty weak field defender area, I don't think that's terrible. Eight Nori's probably your safe guy in cash. He'd probably be the most owned defender by a distance. With no Cunha, he usually has sets. Doesn't have a ton of open play value usually. Like he's not a guy who'll get a ton of crosses, but he'll find a way usually in tackles, shots, foul strong, whatever he can do to kind of get there to his like a 7 to 10 floor. And of course, he's got a ton of upsides because he plays in that wing back role. They don't have a ton of with the Wolves. Like they play with these kind of dual tens. So he's always the guy who's kind of the most wide, which gives him the potential to get crosses. Not that he ever gets a ton, but he also just gets super far forward too in general. So you just kind of hope for a goal contribution too. So yeah, I like Eight Nori a lot. Anthony Robinson was dealing with an issue, ended up playing like 70-ish minutes in the FA Cup. I assume he'll be good to go now. Like they probably just managed his minutes slightly just because he had a little bit of a knock that kept him out of international duty. It's a tough matchup is my only concern there. And he's had a couple of stinkers lately. Like he's not been as safe for his like 12 to 15 that he's had like kind of the super like awesome stretch here. But like I said, it's a pretty weak D slate. So I don't mind Andy Robinson at 4,900. Emerson, if you want to gamble on him potentially splitting with James Ward-Prowse, I could see that as a pretty good justification there at 4,200. But I don't mind that as a play. Not been great, but he has potential. He had that goal against Aston Villa, 19 points. You take that here in a heartbeat. And then some of these like Arsenal center back punts, I never mind. Like Gabriel Magalhaes has gotten 4 goal contributions already this season. If he keeps a clean sheet, he's good for 4 to 5, probably, maybe even like a 7. He's had the 9 even in floor against Wolves. So 3K, I don't mind that as like a flyer GPP punt, maybe even cash as well. And then Aaron Cresswell at 3K. Like I think that's just tempting for guys just purely set pieces. Like he'll take his 5 to maybe say he gets a goal contribution off of a corner kick, maybe it's like 15. That'd be awesome for 3K. And just not a ton of risk really involved in this. Like he's dirt cheap. You just kind of play him to kind of fill out the rest of your build. And you just have, of course, that cushy floor in sets, which I know that doesn't offer a ton for him. Like he's not dropping crazy numbers, but still, you take these kind of scores for a guy at his price at 3K, especially with this matchup. Scarles, if he ends up starting, I don't mind 2,900. Saliba, another one of those Arsenal center back punts for us. And yeah, like I said, not a strong defender slate. Ain't who I'd start around in cash. Goalkeeper, as always, a crapshoot. I will not spend a ton of time on it. Just play kind of whoever fits the rest of your build. Play whoever you have the salary for. I wouldn't think about it too heavily, as I always say. And in terms of a core, I'm going Eight Nori, Bruno Fernandez. Now it's tough. I might go Alanga. I'm tempted to do that because there's plenty of cheap guys to kind of afford these 3 guys. Like I said, we got Ward-Prowse, Cresswell, Strand Larson, Hoyland. Like there's ways to kind of fit all these guys together. However, if I'm wanting to feel a little bit more flexible, I might take out Alanga and go for like a Ward Prowse if there's no Cresswell. I could see myself doing that too. Especially if there's Sokka in, this will probably what I end up doing for a core. I think then it leaves a little bit of agency for each person, whether they want to go Sokka or Ilanga. The tough decision on this slate. But like I said, hopefully we don't have to make that. I hope we don't see Sokka. But yeah, guys, that'll be it, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.